Now hold on to your hats, folks, because America's streets are a clown convention and the freaks are out in force. Ex-posts are screaming about no war protests, clogging up DC, Chicago, LA, New York, and every college town with a vape shop and pronoun seminar. Who is running this circus? A grotesque, unholy alliance of leftists and Islamists waving peace signs while cheering Iran's 40-year genocide, America and Israel death screeds. Picture Queers for Palestine marching hand in hand with folks who would chuck them off a rooftop in Tehran faster than you could say the word ally. It's like watching a vegan beg a butcher for a hug at a pig roast. It's ridiculous. You know, this isn't a protest movement. It's a masterclass in narcissism, psychopathy, projection, gaslighting, brain-dead critical thinking, and hypocrisy so rank it would gag a skunk. Let's unpack some of this lunacy. These no wars clowns, they're not new. They're the left's riot squad, rebranded for 2025. Remember the 2020 Summer of Love when BLM and Antifa turned Minneapolis and Portland into a post-apocalyptic LARP zones? Take a look at this clip. There we go. If you're not watching, we've got rioters on the street. This is LA right here. It seems like every couple of years, LA turns into a war zone. I feel bad for the cops out there. Starting fires, assaulting cops. I mean, it's amazing how the left and the Islamists have the same playbook. One are religious zealots, and the other ones are staunch atheists. But they have the same playbook, and they have the same exact goal. It's going to be an interesting. We're going to have to take a look at. We're going to definitely take a look at this unholy union. Yep. All right. Soros cash flowed like cheap wine, fueling Molotov cocktails, looting Nikes, and brain-dead mantras like defund the police. Yet the idiots decrying capitalism love their shoes and their iPhones. Of course, like the Nike store and the Apple store, the first places that they charge into and they rob, right? I mean, if you hate capitalism so much, then I don't know. Instead of using an iPhone, why don't you use like 2 cans and a really long string, right? The moment one of these panties get hurt, they whine that the police aren't doing something about it. Crazy. This will make our diehard N3 fans really mad. Our beloved producer, my baby brother, Todd, got maced because of these degenerate LARPers. It was a police mace, but Todd and Elijah Schaefer were bringing this to our attention long ago, and watching my brother get maced during a riot was difficult. Check out my baby brother, Todd, get maced.
Our streets! Our streets! Our streets! Our streets! Our streets!
Hey guys, they're backing us up. We're going back. Here we go. Bike by bike, car by car. Here we go. Oh, they're macing. Oh. They're macing us. Here we go.
Philando Castile! Philando Castile! Philando Castile! Philando Castile!
Can you give me an update right now, live on Twitter? What's going on?
The people are
What's going on? I'll get you. Take off your hood. Here, hold up. Take off your hood. Yeah, go. There. Fuck.
There he is. Producer Todd.
What? I know. My bad. Hold up. Get my producer. He's never been maced before. Give him a second.
There he is, Uncle Todd, right there.
We will. We're going to keep recording. We're not going to stop. Oh, here we go.
There he is.
Yo, hey.
I got to hand it to Uncle Todd, our trusty producer here. even when he was being maced, he still held out his umbrella so that other people would be protected by the mace. And let's get one thing straight. This was police mace. And good. They maced the crowd full of Antifa, BLM rioters. I mean, I'm sad to see my brother get maced. He was there reporting the news, doing exactly what he always does, which is devote his life and blood and sweat and tears to bring you the best. But let's face it, if all these rioters weren't whining and crying and screaming and hosting these die-ins, did you see that BLM guy laying on the floor? That's a die-in, right? Just laying on the floor like he's dead, right? Totally insane. I'm sure that Elijah Schaffer and my brother Todd weren't the targets of that mace. They were just trying to bring you the news. You know, in 2011's Occupy Wall Street, where trust fund brats with $7 smoothies were whining about capitalism while demanding free Wi-Fi, you know, the same playbook applies today. Antifa busses in their goons with black masks and a black bloc with a fetish for like torching a Starbucks, not because they love Iran, but because they're psychopathic nihilists who want to burn their own house down for TikTok clout. It's weird. It's just weird. These aren't activists. These are arsonists with personality disorders, projecting their inner chaos onto American streets. And the slogans, no war, hands off Iran. You know, that's pure word salad. It's a mantra, you know, dumber than a sociology syllabus. X-posts show that these drones chanting, it's like a cult audition, zero critical thinking, just parroting platitudes that wouldn't even survive a basic Google search. Iran's rap sheet, drone attacks on U.S. bases, cyber attacks crashing our grids, and 40 years of death to America, death to Israel rants while arming Hamas and Hezbollah to slaughter children. But these protesters try to gaslight us, pretending Iran is a victim while ignoring its vows for genocide. It's not ignorance. It's willful blindness, fueled by narcissism so bloated, their spray-painted signs, they rewrite reality. They don't hate war. That's obvious. They hate America's goodness. They're nihilists. They don't loathe the U.S. because it's evil. They loathe the U.S. because it's free, strong, and doesn't grovel when they have a temper tantrum. Now, here's an oldie goodie of leftist politicians providing these degenerates with much more than a dog whistle. These are literal marching orders. Check this out.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
This way. That's it right there. Pulling it up.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
This is from the people who brought you peace. This is from the people who brought you love wins. Love is love. You know, it's the same with Israel, you know. You know, they dare to exist despite Iran's apocalyptic wet dreams. This leftist Islamic romance is peak hypocrisy. Queers for Palestine? Are you high? Now, this is the most insane thing about what we've been witnessing in the last several months, in the last several years, actually. Queers for Palestine. The same people who would be like beat to death like a piñata in any of these Islamic countries. You know, Hamas would turn them into piñatas. And Iran's morality police would flog them just for existing. Weird combination of allies, right? You know, Tehran hangs gays. They stone women. They fund every terrorist from Beirut to Yemen. And the left is out here holding hands with Islamists because nothing screams woke like cozying up to a regime that would outlaw their entire ideology. It's weird, right? It's a little weird. But it's not solidarity. It's this weird psychopathic projection, you know, pretending that the mullahs share their oppressed vibe. I mean, they sort of do in this backward sense. They're like weirdly on opposite sides of the spectrum, but they've made this unholy alliance. You know, ex-posts are flooded with selfies waving Mexican flags and Palestinian flags and Iranian flags next to the rainbow flags, as if Tehran is like booking drag queen story hour for Ramadan. They're not allies on their face, right? On its face, they're sort of useful idiots, like gaslighting themselves into thinking that this alliance makes any sense. Newsflash, it's a marriage of narcissists and fanatics, united only by one thing: their hatred of the West. Now, let's not skip the critical thinking void here. These clowns couldn't logic their way out of a paper bag. You know, they scream no war while Iran's proxies hold hostages and fire rockets from schoolyards. But when Trump strikes, calibrated, moral, no civilian blood, he guts Iran's nuclear hubs. They lose their minds. It's crazy. They don't lose their minds about the hostages, about emaciated hostages, women and children being slaughtered in their own homes. Why? Because they don't think. They emote. They're toddlers with megaphones. And the hypocrisy shines when you compare Israel's mercy in 1967, sending thousands of prisoners of war home after a crippling the enemy in hours. If Israel were such an evil country, they could have taken tens of thousands of prisoners of war and done what to them? If it was Hamas, you know what they would have done. But Israel, they marched them right home. You know, these protesters are silent on Tehran's cruelty, but they wail when America and Israel stop a nuclear holocaust. They're not for peace. They're for murder. Murder of the West. You know, meanwhile, Biden and Obama had turned America into a Sharia-friendly free-for-all, letting millions of unvetted migrants cross the border. Now they're demanding Sharia law. These are the same folks marching with the left, chanting no war, while Iran's proxies bomb kindergartners. Let that sink in. And Trump's strike? A precision response to 40 years of Iran's genocidal threats. These no war weirdos, they're not mad about war. They're mad that America and Israel won't simply roll over and die like they want to die themselves. Take a look at this clip. Okay. See this clip? These are yeah, all these people need food, right? Except they're destroying Israeli goods right here. This is your boycott, divest, and sanction. This is what boycott, divest, and sanction means. It means taking perfectly good food and destroying it because it was made in Israel. Insane. And we're supposed to send aid to these people? We're supposed to help out? Your hard-earned taxpayer money? We're supposed to send it over there so they can do that? You know, instead of boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel, we should be promoting, supporting, and investing in Israel. Here's why. Take a look.
In 1917, Jewish physicist Albert Einstein laid the theoretical foundation for the laser. Light amplification by stimulated emissions of radiation. In 1960, another Jewish physicist, Ted Maimon, fired the world's first working laser. But it wasn't until 1976 when the world's first commercial laser company opened a research facility in Tel Aviv, Israel, that something amazing happened. A technological revolution. Telecommunications, manufacturing and distribution, robotics, aeronautics, microcomputing, alternative energy sources, cutting-edge medicine, understanding our universe and our place in it, with the technology to keep our children safe, propelling us into the future. Promote, support, invest. Israel.
All right, I gotta hand it to myself. That was a piece of content that me and your trusty producer, Uncle Todd, created a few years back in a response to the boycott, divest, and sanction movement. The voiceover on that clip was yours truly. We wrote the music. We did the whole thing from scratch, all the research and everything. And it's all true. Israel has been a bastion of peace and prosperity, while all the countries around them siphon and suckle off of them like it's their mother's teat. Okay? We are, this is the boycott, divestment, and sanction, the boycott, sanction, and divestment movement is, it's suicidal. Listen, the enemies of America and Israel, you know, their narcissism demands applause, and their psychopathy craves chaos, and their gaslighting rewrites Iran as the victim. Israel and America, we want peace. We want peace. Do you know how easy it would be for America to like just obliterate like half the world? Maybe the entire world. It would be so easy. Those are not the aspirations. We have what we have because we worked for it. And if you really think about it, a lot of most of the technology that funds all of these operations was created and developed in America and in Israel. Chew on that for a minute. If we wanted global domination, global colonization, we could have it. That's not what the end game is here. The end game is peace. But they hate America, not because it's bad, but because it's good. That's nihilism. We're free, we're strong, we're unapologetic, just like Trump's leadership. This isn't about peace for them, it's about power. The left and their Islamic pals do not want harmony. They'll let the entire world burn as long as they can be kings and queens of the ashes. You know, Trump's strike showed them that it is strength, not slogans, not mantras, not patchouli, not Birkenstocks, not Molotov cocktails that keeps the world spinning. Now they can project, they can gaslight, they can riot all they want, but America is not buying this narcissistic, brain-dead, hypocritical garbage anymore. Now let's peel back the curtain on the twisted common ground between leftists and the radical Islamists, a bond that is so perverse that it makes a horror flick look like a Pixar short. Take a look at these 2 clips.
Turning to other news here in the Bay Area, abortion rights activists across the nation rallied today. Their goal to defend and protect abortion access. Right here in the Bay Area, more than 2,000 people took over Joe Chalura Courthouse Square. ABC Action News reporter J.J. Burton was there and has more.
A ban's off our bodies. And that's the message people across the country are sending to lawmakers and the Supreme Court.
On one hand, I do feel encouraged to see so many folks in the community coming together. But on the other hand, I'm just pissed that we have to come out in the first place.
Bernice Lauren is one of the people who organized this rally in Tampa Saturday. More than 2,000 people of all different genders, race, sexual orientation, and political views came out.
I absolutely did not think that we would be here at this day and age.
Ida Mackett is one of the organizers. She also has 4 children, 3 of them girls.
Knowing that, we have freedoms, knowing that we have freedom of speech, knowing that we have freedom of religion, to think that I would not have the freedom to practice my own bodily autonomy and my rights over my body is absolutely insane.
There you go. Leftists fighting to slaughter and genocide babies. Now watch their Muslim counterparts.
To a Fox News alert, at least 85 people were hurt in the latest Iranian ballistic missile attack, this in Tel Aviv and beyond, including a direct hit on a hospital in southern Israel. Young children are among the wounded in the attack.
And earlier, our foreign correspondent, Greg Palcott, capturing footage of Israeli air defenses trying to stop the incoming fire.
They're not taking a break. We've been listening to the anti-missile defenses. There's a couple right there. It's a wake-up call for this country, for the city, that this war between Iran and Israel is still on.
And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is promising to, quote, exact the full price from the tyrants in Tehran.
They all look like genocidal maniacs to me. They all look like they're trying to genocide babies, genocide children. If the children happen to be lucky enough to be born, they're either castrated or completely brainwashed to unalive themselves. It's not just their hatred of the West. It's a full-blown death cult obsession, a shared fetish for self-destruction that spits on the concept of life itself. Both the left and radical Islamists, Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, no wars, they're high on their own nihilism, projecting their psychopathy, gaslighting us into calling it justice, drowning in a narcissism so deep that it's practically their religion. Now, here's an oldie but a goodie, and it's completely prophetic. Here's David Horowitz, 18 years ago, predicting the events of today.
Now more on this from David Horowitz, a Fox News contributor and author of Shadow Party. David, I don't know if you heard all of what she said, but that essentially we're breeding these guys in our midst.
It's absolutely the case. There are more than 1,000 U.S. professors who, in the middle of this war, in which Israel was defending itself against a genocidal enemy, which has declared its objective to wipe Israel from the face of the map, 1,000 professors signed a statement basically supporting Hezbollah. The doctrine that these professors teach in their universities, the radicals do, has America playing the role of the great Satan. We are the oppressor nation. We're the imperialist nation. We in the West are responsible for the war on terror.
But who's stopping it, Dave? Anyone?
Who's stopping this? On the contrary, there's 150 Muslim student associations on American campuses. But the Muslim Students Association was created by Hamas and is funded by Saudi Arabia. They're Wahhabi Islamicists, and they basically support our enemies. The head of the Middle Eastern Studies Association, Joel Biden, actually is suing me over a copyright issue, which is ridiculous because he objects to the fact that I called him a supporter of terrorism. But if you read what he says and the statements of the Middle Eastern Studies Association, which is our Middle Eastern professors, what they do is everything the United States does is wrong, and we create the terrorists.
The left worships death. just like the Islamists do. They slaughter babies in the womb, calling abortion reproductive freedom. They've racked up millions of tiny little graves, over 600,000 a year in the U.S. Fast forward to very recently. Here's a clip of the Islamists in Iran.
حضر ملبس الخدمة واتحسم لابو اليمة واقول يا علي الهمة مثل كل عام عني يا مثل الله الله احس لجمن جروحي نمسح صور مذبوحي واطب الكربلاء بروحي ندخل الحسينية ملبس الخدمة واتحسم لابو اليمة واقول يا علي الهمة مثل كل عام عني يا مثل علي يا حسين لجمن جروحي نمسح صور مذبوحي واطب الكربلاء بروحي.
Oh wait, did I say Iran? That's Michigan. That is on our home soil. The left castrates and sterilizes their own kids, branding it as gender-affirming care. They brand it as love and tolerance, while pushing confused teens into irreversible mutilation, often before they can legally buy a beer. And then we have this flooding our streets, and this is what the leftists support. Female genital mutilation and such, Sharia law on our streets in America. This is an unholy alliance between the left and radical Muslims. Puberty blockers and surgeries leave these young bodies barren. A sacrifice to the altar of woke ideology, a sacrifice to the altar of narcissism and nihilism. What unites these two factions? It's a ritual of annihilation. And it doesn't stop there. The left's weird green fetishes pushes these depopulation mantras, shaming people for having kids, while preaching climate apocalypse like it's a cult vow to empty the earth. It's crazy. We love death more than they love life. It could literally be coming from your average American woke leftist. And the narcissism screams, my identity trumps life itself. And their psychopathy shrugs at the carnage. They don't care. They project their guilt, gaslighting us with choice and equity. Storming our streets, slaughtering our babies, castrating our kids. That shouldn't be a choice. That shouldn't be a choice for you. You should not be allowed to do that. The radical Islamists, Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, they're all cut from the same death-obsessed cloth as the left. They have different costumes, but they want the same thing. The Islamists hide their bombs among babies and civilians in hospitals and schools, turning Gaza schools and Lebanese hospitals into rocket launch pads because dead kids make better headlines than living ones. Hamas's October 2023 attack killed 1,200 Israelis, many burned alive, while they paraded their hostages like trophies. Hezbollah's rocket barrages from civilian neighborhoods invite retaliation, and they cry, war crime! America and Israel are targeting our civilians. No. If civilians die in these conflicts, it's their fault, not ours. It's their fault. Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis. Not Israel, not America. It's their fault. Iran's IRGC funds this chaos using human shields as strategy. over 40,000 civilian deaths in Gaza since 2023, per Hamas's own numbers, often inflated, right? We don't know what's coming out of there. They want to mask their tactic of embedding fighters in crowds. Despicable, if you ask me. You know, a country worth a damn protects its civilians. Doesn't shove them in the middle of a war. And what do you think happens to their POWs? Starved, tortured, beheaded, violated. Not like Israel's 1967 mercy, sending thousands of Egyptians and Syrian captives home after a decisive crippling of their enemies in hours. Remember, I call this the 3-hour war, not the 6-day war. 3 hours to fight, and then the next 5.5 days to clean up the mess. It's like clean up on aisle 3, guys. Iran's mullahs chant death to America, death to Israel like it's some national anthem. That is psychopathy, reveling in martyrdom as like this weird recruitment tool. What kind of person wants to go fight and never come back? No, you fight to win and then you come back home to your family. And you don't fight to kill innocent civilians and children either. You go fight the bad guy, you do your job, then you come home, and you hug your kids and your wife. You know, they gaslight the world, claiming resistance while their proxies literally slaughter. And their narcissism and psychopathy demand this global submission to this like weird apocalyptic vision. You know, what's the common thread here between the leftists and the Islamists? They're both death cults, sacrificing life for ideology with this weird sociopathic grin, this smug grin that says, we know more than you do. We know more than everything. We know more than everyone. We don't believe in God. We are gods. The left's abortion mills and sterilization clinics mirror Iran's human shield playbook. They both weaponize the vulnerable to score points. The left's my body, my choice mantra, it echoes Hamas's martyrdom is glory. It's this weird narcissistic hymn to the self over life. They both reject the sanctity of life, whether it's the left's depopulation dogma or Iran's jihadist body count. Their projection is blatant. The left calls pro-lifers oppressors while crushing the unborn. Islamists call Israel genocidal while bombing civilians in buses. Random stabbings on the street. Yeah, that proves your point. You know, their gaslighting paints death as liberation. Nihilism. But it's this weird lack of critical thinking, ignoring abortion stats or Iran's terror rap sheet. It keeps the delusion alive. And the hypocrisy? Well, they're silent when Hamas starves hostages. But they wail when Trump's surgical strike stops a nuke with no civilian blood whatsoever. They don't want life. They want utter obliteration. Trump is putting an end to that. Now check out our exclusive merch at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. We got some great stuff out there. We got some great stuff coming out. Uncle Todd is designing some really great merch for us. Check out our exclusive merch at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com.